Hi, I'm Brad. This is one of the most exciting videos I have ever made. Probably. A couple months ago, I made a video titled something like the biggest PC VR game of all time, or something like that. The game was talking about Sandbox, with a weird "and" to sound kind of like a hipster club or something. It is basically the spiritual successor to Garry's Mod 2, and it will support VR. I'll go into more detail about it in that video, but for now, this is kind of an update video to kind of get you aware of what's been going on. To catch a few people up to speed in the fastest way I can, again, it's going to be like Garry's Mod, incredibly open with a ton of game modes and even more possibilities of creation than even Garry's Mod. Garry's Mod was very limited by the source engine and the fact that you had to mount really games and content and assets onto Garry's Mod, which required you to buy, obviously, third-party games to make things work. Sandbox is completely different, but it's also running on the Source 2 engine, which is the same engine that Half-Life Alyx runs on. Basically, when you join a game mode or a game or server, it will download every add-on you need and every file you need. And you can even update the code like live, which is really cool. Anyway, we can get into talking more about that later, but I just want to give an update on how VR is in Sandbox, or really what's been going on. Literally yesterday, as this video is posted, Facepunch, which are the developers behind Sandbox, Rust, and Garry's Mod, added a new system to open the floodgates to hopefully get more people and more content creators to build content for the game. Already we saw a huge rush of popularity and a ton of people trying to get their hands on a game key. The system they had in place really kind of benefited mostly people who made content in the original Garry's Mod and maybe Half-Life Alyx, because again, they're mostly looking for content because it is a developer preview. That being said, it didn't stop from thousands of people from applying, and as the time of this video, the queue to get a key is 16,000 people, all wanting to get their hands on Sandbox. Now for a game that I really kind of figured was still very on the down low of popularity, those are some pretty serious numbers. As for me, I have already had access, and I was actually got access the first week that Garry himself has been giving out keys to other third-party developers. Thankfully, my work in the Half-Life Alyx maps I made kind of made me go up in the priority list. Unfortunately, I haven't really created much except for a couple of maps and some competitions with my friend Gyarados? Gyarados? I still don't know how to say his name, and I've known him for like a year now. But really, I'm waiting for the VR support to really push me to make content. I'm going to say this one more time. When Sandbox has full VR support, I really do believe it's going to be one of the biggest titles that VR, or at least PC VR gamers, will have their hands in all the time. The retention rate for this game I expect to be incredibly high because it not only allows you to add PC VR functionality, but also allow those VR players to play with non-VR players. But at its current state, we only just see the most basic of VR implementations in the game. When I made my last video, you could literally not do anything. You could try to hack the game to run in VR, but you would have a very messed up and skewed rendering workflow in your eyes, basically. It was just impossible to look at. But literally this month, the actual team at Facepunch finally fixed all the rendering issues, mostly, save for a few weird particle bugs that render kind of different locations per eye. So you can actually load up worlds and even game modes and just kind of sit there as a stationary spectator. There's no bindings, there's no controllers or anything, but already just putting yourself in a game, again, this is Source 2, so the lighting and graphics are already quite beautiful, and seeing everything at full scale is actually a pretty neat experience in itself. What's also cool is if you have something like Play Space Mover, you can still move yourself around. So I was just kind of sitting there while my friends were all playing on their non-VR counterpart, and I was just watching them play, and I was laughing the entire time. What's even kind of weird about this is even though that you're just kind of a camera, when you do join a game mode, it does give you a player model, except that player model is actually in a different location than where the camera view is for your VR headset. The VR headset always spawns you right on the 0-0 origin of a map, whereas the player model will spawn wherever the spawn points are. So it's kind of a weird disconnect as well, because if you like hear audio in your right ear of your player model, you're nowhere near your player model, but again, there's still spatial audio happening. It's a weird out-of-body experience. We checked out a few of the game modes just so I can kind of give you an idea of some of the content that people have been already making. Again, only people that know how to make stuff or like sort of like developers or hobbyists are really getting into the game. The game is still very broken, and even the mapping tools from someone who really got very excited and very in-depth to the Half-Life Alyx mapping tools, they're kind of recreating all the assets in C#. So even a lot of the stuff that I know for mapping don't really translate over yet to Sandbox because they're still rebuilding everything to make it more developer friendly. Half-Life Alyx uses like a lot of Lua scripts, and yeah, no one really likes that outside of, well, really anyone. But a few game modes I have showcased in this video. We're going to start with this zombie game mode, which again was made by my close friend Garrys, and it's basically Left 4 Dead but in Sandbox. It's a very work in progress thing, but it's very, like all the same concepts you would expect from a Left 4 Dead game. When VR support is added, they do plan to add actual VR playability, so you want to actually play Left 4 Dead and Sandbox in VR and play with your non-VR friends. That will be a possibility. Not a possibility, it will be an actuality. This game mode's only being really developed by one person, and it's already, you can probably see, has a lot of potential. And a lot of game modes are already like that. There's also a giant team working in Sandbox called Eagle One. If you are a big fan of the Half-Life Alyx workshop and many of the great maps on there, that might sound a very familiar name to you. And yeah, they made some of the best Half-Life Alyx maps out there, and they've been growing and growing in team members, and they released really the first big full working game mode for Sandbox. Unfortunately, at the time, as again, this is a very work in progress game modes break all the time, so I wasn't able to show off any of the gameplay for it, but it's like Hotline Miami, but multiplayer. But I was still able to load up some of the maps that I was in, and then kind of see what is also being worked on, and they made some beautiful maps, and yeah, it's very fun game mode if you ever get into Sandbox someday. It's probably one of the first you'll want to try. Of course, there's Sandbox, which is the name of the game, right? You know Garrys Mod and Construct. Well, this is gameplay of the new Construct, which again is changing literally every day. You might be very confused because this Construct looks very different than the original Construct in Garrys Mod, and yeah, it is. It's huge. I know some people might be saying, oh, well, that doesn't look at all like Garrys Mod Construct, but the thing is, it's so interesting to really have more capabilities in a mapping and modeling engine such as Source 2, that being limited by this one design of the old one is just something that's not attractive to even the developers of this game. But that doesn't stop anyone from doing things such as reporting the map into Sandbox. You can do that. If you want to play the old Construct or Flatgrass, people have already done it. It's there. That might be another thing that people might want to complain about is the player models. Yeah, the player models are not actually old 15-plus-year-old Half-Life 2 models. People might say that those models are the charm of Garrys Mod, but really, yeah, I can see that. And there's nothing actually stopping people from importing those player models into Sandbox. It's actually very easy. It's just the default player model is something that, well, the team at Facepunch do not own the Half-Life 2 model assets. The only reason that they were so common in Garrys Mod is because you were literally mounting Half-Life 2 and other Source 1 games, which came with the assets and models around that. You don't need that in Sandbox, so that model is not there, even though people can import it, and even set it as default character models for game modes that people create. That's like one of the biggest things that people always complain about when they like take a first gander at Sandbox is that, yeah, these hot dog people are lame. But you kind of start to love them the more you actually play the game. Finally, there's of course some very bad game modes that some people are just kind of throwing on there. They open the floodgates to a lot of people to really make whatever they want, and we are seeing some really bad stuff. But some of it's so bad that it's good. I'm showing off some gameplay here of literally a mode where you have a gun that shoots poop emojis at each other. And if you hold down right click, you can charge it up and shoot a giant poop emoji. And it's like it's horrifying. Especially in VR when you see that thing coming at you. Whew, that's a lot of shit. And there's more experiments other than that, like the pool game mode. In VR, it looks like a normal first-person view, but the pool game mode is actually third-person and a non-VR mode, which, again, this is a very open game and very open to a lot of modability, which is one of the strengths of PC gaming and PC VR gaming, in my opinion. being strapped down to a first-person only sort of mode is really kind of lame in a way. Allowing the camera to be wherever you want and make tons of game modes, including an RTS game mode that the Facepunch devs are working on themselves, is amazing for one game. And I do believe that Sandbox, while it's very lackluster in VR support right now, it's very important to give an update right now, because when it gets the first findings and controller support, it's going to be huge for VR. I really think it's going to be such a blast. We even see people talking about getting full body tracking support in there, which it doesn't even require Facepunch themselves to do, but passionate members of the community. PC VR is driven heavily by passion, and really we just need the tools to be able to put that passion into motion. And I think Sandbox is the perfect example of a game that will allow just that. That's pretty much my Sandbox in VR and pretty much everything that's been going on in Sandbox update video. I will not be doing another one of these until we get a big VR update, because I do think this game is going to be big, and I do want to give at least some updates whenever some big things happen. But if you really want to know every single little thing about Sandbox, I mentioned my friend Garrys a couple times in this video. He actually has a YouTube channel, which I will link in the description below, and he literally just spams YouTube with every Sandbox related content you could possibly think of. He's very good at clickbait too, which is admirable, to say the least. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video and got to learn a little bit about Sandbox and why it's going to, what I believe, be one of the biggest PC and PC VR games of all time in the next few years. If you liked the video, like it, subscribe, and yeah, click the bell, I guess. Ding ding. Alright, bye bye, screw you.